So occasionally I feel the need to become inspired and endeavor to create something creative. So I wrote something today, and I just kind of wanted to get people's opinion on it because I feel like it's pretty good. And so the title of it is, What Happens When the God of War Decides There's Too Much War? War is supposed to be a tool. It makes us it keeps us safe. It makes our society possible. It builds roads and brings great men to the front line. Most importantly, it keeps our women and children safe. He was quiet for a moment. And so he being the god of war and she being a woman that was praying to him because she was in an abusive situation, basically put there by the government. He was quiet for a moment. She could almost hear the anguish that lingered in the silence before he spoke. What these men have done. He stopped, unable to control his anger. The ground began to shake beneath them. Although she couldn't see, she was almost certain that the structure of reality was becoming undone. Perhaps she thought it was better not to see the full glory and power of a god. It was in her mind that she should fear, but he continued to hold her with such tenderness and strength that despite his anger and immense power, she was not afraid. I'm sorry, he whispered. Sometimes I think of the abuses my children suffer at the hands of those meant to protect them, and I cannot control myself. It has led to this corrupted place. I don't think you know how bad it is. He fell silent again. The god wondered to himself if he should say all that was on his mind, the recklessness of the fascistic government, the sexual and physical abuses of children that went on daily, and the worst part of it was the religious extremists preaching and practicing child sacrifice with the allowance of the so-called government. Your leaders care nothing for your people. They aren't leaders at all. They're spoiled brats who know nothing at all. In the end, their arrogance will lead to their destruction. He began to cry. This took her aback. A god cry? And the god of war nonetheless? And over the endless abuses of her people that she had not only seen but been a victim of? It occurred to her that in some way he was crying for her pain as well. It was not at all what she would have expected from the god of war. Never would she have expected such a sense of love and compassion. She felt so moved that she wrapped her arms around what she supposed was his physical form, or at least the form he chose to interact with. His tension released as he surrendered into her touch. He cried into her neck. She held him until he was done. When he was done, he saw the tears on her neck and began to wipe them with his hand. As he did so, he also began to stroke her head with his tear-soaked hands. When he stopped, she felt a strange sensation atop her head. There, he said, my beautiful one is restored. Quickly, she reached her hands up to her head. There was suddenly a full head of luxurious hair upon her head. She began to cry for the gift he gave her. She was always so proud of her hair when she was a free woman. She took time and care to make it soft and luxurious as she could. It was one way she had attracted her fiancé. How he had loved to stroke it as they lay together before he was taken from her and killed. You don't have to be a slave anymore. You don't have to be abused anymore. I am here to protect you and free you from this prison. I come to free all my children from this horrific prison. I wonder if you can possibly understand. He was sighing again, possibly musing about the future. Thank you. The sound of her voice brought him out of his musing. For what, my love? My hair. Her voice broke. I don't think you understand how much I appreciate this, or how much this means to me. You were never meant to be a slave, and yet you have been used and abused like one. I have not done a good enough job guiding your people. This is my fault. It is the very least I could do for my beautiful one. He held and stroked her hair. Then he whispered, Are you ready to be my wife? Shock silenced her. She had no idea what to say. Does one reject a god? Could one? There's so much that needs to be done. I need help. I can't do this on my own. There's a secret to the universe. You need two to create. Two. I can't do this by myself. I need you. I need you to choose me. Can you understand? She swallowed. What do you want to create? He kissed her forehead. A new future for our children, for all of my future, all of my children, a future filled with hope and prosperity, a future full of faith and love, a future where perhaps these terrible wretches called people will one day be worthy of knowing the highest, my Father. Soon you will know him. How will I know him? He thought for a moment. He is like the wind, ever present but never visible. He is like the light, bringing order to the chaos. He is like the earth, steady and ever constant in his nature. He is like the water. His love flows throughout the land and waters what was once parched and dried up. He is like fire that burns the chaff from the wheat at the end of the summer, and so he does so to the soul. You can never escape his judgment or his wrath. I am here to fulfill his desire to quench his anger. You will help me rain down destruction on the wicked and evil people of the land. You will carry a spark that will set your whole country ablaze. There will not be a drop of water in the land for 40 days and 40 nights. The whole landscape will become desolation and despair, but out of complete annihilation will arise a phoenix, like a phoenix, a new way, a new life. And so that's what I have right now. I think it's pretty good. I'm pretty interested in the concept that I came up with it, which is essentially you have a very warlike society, and the idea is that they send off their young women to basically go be sex slaves for the soldiers off fighting their wars, and this is the way that they continuously get new stock for their fighting and their soldiers, is to sacrifice basically the virginity and the young livelihood of these women to these men. And it's one of the ways that they encourage their men to want to be in the military is by providing all these sex slaves. And so you provide the sex slave gets married, the sex slave goes home, and according to the society, that's like a high honor or something. And so the god of war becomes extremely angry by not only that practice, but other, corrupt and horrific practices in the society, and decides that there has to be a change, that this whole focus on war and, imperialism and stuff like that just needs to stop. And so, obviously I think it's probably the reason why I'm having all these inspired sort of creative ideas is because of everything going on in our culture right now. I mean, like, you look at what's going on with the Telford grooming gang and stuff like that. It's absolutely fucking horrifying. And then I don't know. I guess it would be an interesting twist to look at something like a war, which is inherently destructive, but it's also a tool, right? War has been used as a tool to create societies that have been more free, okay? The United States of America was created by the Revolutionary War, but that war wasn't the most atrocious war in the world. It was a war that was used as a tool to accomplish a goal. The problem becomes when you have war that is for the sake of war and not for the protection of the citizens. And so, think about it. If you are the god of war and war is supposed to be used to either further your own country's goals or aspirations or something like that. Maybe you have a barbarian society next to you that keeps invading your society, and you're like, well, that land has resources and those guys are assholes, so we're going to go take over that land and conquer it and colonize it and stuff like that. Not that I necessarily agree with doing that widespread, but to a certain extent, war is a tool in that way that, you know, you use it to come in, conquer, and then you stop, okay? And there's a proper place for war. And so I'm just thinking about, like, if there is a proper place for war, what would the god of war think and want and, you know, feel if that tool was being misused? Which, you know, I think you can say in our society it definitely has been misused in so many different ways. You have the drone strikes that Obama was so fucking fond of. You've got the overthrow of Libya and Gaddafi that Hillary Clinton participated in. You have, you know, the endless proxy wars in the Middle East. You have the Iraq wars by the Bushes. You got, I mean, I can't even remember a time in my life when we weren't really at war, you know? Like, I mean, technically, my entire life we've been at war because the Cold War never actually technically ended. And now we're still dealing with this whole Russia bullshit. And the whole reason is that we keep sacrificing our children on the altar of fucking war. And even more disgusting is that it's not us fighting the war, it's us just sacrificing our children to the warriors of our enemies. Which is even worse. Like, in my story, at least, like, the sacrifice is by the government itself, and it's like, it's one thing to have the government abuse you, right? It's another complete thing for the government to import people into your country to abuse you. It's like, yeah, the government's gonna abuse you. That's what's gonna fucking happen. That's what happens with every bureaucracy and every government, is because it eventually becomes overburdensome and overcorrupted and overpowerful, and it becomes abusive to its people. And that is the story of government. What is happening right now in our world, we have a barbarian horde essentially raging into Europe, committing a rape jihad, and we're doing nothing. And I say we, but I don't have anything to do with what's going on in Europe. The Europeans are allowing this to happen. They are importing these people, calling them refugees, and allowing them to rape their little girls to the point of infertility. I mean, it's pretty disgusting. And these girls, I mean, where are the feminists? Where's the Me Too crowd? Where are these people? The only people who seem to actually give a shit about women who are abused by Muslims are the so-called ones who have internalized misogyny, because we happen to be conservative and we don't actually want our daughters to be forced into some Muslim marriage because, or rape gang, or whatever the fuck it is that's going on over there. Don't want any of that shit near my kids. You know what I mean? It's like I see all the depravity and that comes out of it. I mean, horrific stories of, like, little girls getting their tongues nailed to the table and raped. Like, legitimately horrifying stories. And the worst part of it is that the European governments have specifically imported these people. These are the people that they have specifically allowed into their countries. And it is, I think it's an even worse form of abuse than the abuses of a government on a people. Simply because of the third party nature of it. It's like, yeah, we're gonna abuse the fucking hell out of you. But we're not actually the ones doing it, so it's okay. We're just gonna let these other people do it. But they're not actually citizens, so we can't actually do anything to them because that would be racist. It's a complete rejection of responsibility. And so you have these third-party people, which you're not actually supposed to be able to blame for anything, otherwise you're a racist. And then also, the government won't take any responsibility for it because, well, it's not their fault. You know, maybe it's the racist white people. You know, it's the racist white people, obviously. It's like, it's this whole other new level of, like, hell and hypocrisy that like, I don't even know how to explain. I mean, you have, like, the USSR that killed millions of people, but even that, to a certain extent, I feel like is not even as bad on a moralistic level. It's like the shit that's going on right now in Europe and shit is like as bad as what the Japanese soldiers would do in World War II. And I mean, you know, they would literally rape women, then bury them up to their heads in sand, then rape their face again, and then, like, kill them. I mean, absolutely horrific fucking shit that the Japanese did, okay? And you know what? We annihilated them to a very great extent, and I'm actually pretty glad that we dropped Hiroshima and those bombs, you know, because at a certain point when you think about the shit that they did, they needed to be taught a lesson, and they learned it, you know, they learned it. Now they get out all of those fucking impulses through their anime and shit, and now their men are, like, opting out of, like, having relationships with women, and they're like, whole rate of oh fuck, not rebirth or regeneration, but population growth is dramatically decreasing the replacement of their population, because, well, why the fuck would men want to put into a system where the woman gets to go sleep with some other guy and then take all his money? And that's what's basically going on in Japan right now. It's what's going on in the United States to a good extent too, which is pretty fucking terrible. There's a lot of fucked up things in the world. I just can't wrap my head around it sometimes. And it's just like it's gonna come to a point, you know, where if you guys can, it's probably best to, like, start thinking about moving out towards the country. It's probably best to start thinking about, you know, becoming self-sufficient and, you know, reliable on only yourself. Like, learn how to grow your own food, raise your own livestock, get a you know, freeze dryer or a, you know, preserver or something like that, so that you can preserve your own food. Get a pantry, like, you know, buy guns. Like, I look at the world right now, and I've never been like that doomsday prepper type person, but I see the shit that's going on in Europe right now, and, you know, at the same time that they're allowing little girls to be raped, they're taking away the freedom of speech of their citizens to even make Nazi jokes, to teach a little tiny pug to go like this when you say Hail Hitler or whatever, Sieg Heil, and for some reason that is more dangerous to the government over in Europe right now than little girls, thousands of them, being raped on a daily basis. And then I see, you know, like, Trump passed that omnibus spending bill, which I don't even know what to think of that. Like, I don't think there's certain things, like, that are so fucked up with our the way that we run things, that I don't know if Trump could have avoided signing it. I honestly don't know. Apparently Mattis called him at some point and was like, we need the fucking spending in that bill, you better sign it. And so I don't even know what to think about it. Did he get pressured into signing it? Did he even know what was in it? Like, and then you get something like the Cloud Act, which you know, like, we already don't have a fucking Fourth Amendment, but that just, like, fucking cements it even more. It's like, the NSA can basically spy on any fucking person they want to, and then the Cloud Act just is another layer on top of it. It's like, well, if you really can't get access to that shit, you can go through another country to go get it. And it's just like, it's disgusting. The type of shit that are every single fucking government on this planet is trying to get away with. It's just absolutely disgusting, and everything has just fucking gone to shit. And like, we have very few people out there who are actually trying to make things better. And unfortunately, those people aren't in positions of power. You have one idiot like Donald Trump, which, not an idiot, he's fairly smart, but I think he's more of an instinctual genius than anything else. I don't think he actually knows what he's doing half the time. I think he just gets lucky a lot, and he also is really good at reading the polls, and he's like, okay, well, I don't want to piss off my main constituents too much, I'll flip-flop back and forth. And I gotta tell you, he's way better than Hillary Clinton, but at the same time, everything's just so fucked up that there's only a certain amount that a man who is not prepared to actually be president, and mind you, I don't think Donald Trump actually was prepared to be president, there's only so much he can accomplish and do, especially with the government as fucking corrupt as it is. I mean, there's gotta be some sort of give, and the only thing I can think is that things are just gonna keep getting worse and worse and worse until it finally hits a fucking breaking point and violence erupts. And at that point, I don't know, I'd rather be out in the countryside. I'd rather not get bombed to hell because I'm too close to Portland. You know what I mean? Like, I don't hold a lot of hope for the future in terms of the stability of our society. And so what we're gonna have to end up doing is creating our own little communities that are stable and self-functioning and self-sufficient. The best way that we could live would be to have small little towns that are barely reliant on government at all, you know, like, and so that when the government does go down, as it's probably going to at some point, we won't be fucking screwed over, you know? It'd be nice to have a little town out in the middle of nowhere somewhere that had its own electrical grid, that was set up on, like, solar panels, that, you know, maybe had generators and stuff, and the people just kind of decided to work together and live together for the same basic reasons. I see that type of life as being kind of idyllic, or alternatively, you know, having your own little farmstead to yourself, and maybe having, you know, neighbors around you that have their farmsteads, and, you know, that sort of rural community I would really like to live in. That's not dependent on the government, where, you know, hopefully if things go to complete shit, there's a way to take care of yourself, you know, and not be completely destroyed by, you know, what feels to be this ever-looming threat of complete annihilation from, you know, all these forces in our world that seem to want to destroy Western civilization, and just the whole concept of responsibility and merit and everything that makes freedom possible. There's so much messed up about our world, and I just want there to be some hope for the future, you know. And I see so many of, you know, like my peers right now who are trying to stand up and say something and do something, and it just feels like it's too late. You know, like, we have inherited this world that is completely broken, and now we sit here and we're the ones who have to fix it. And we've not been prepared in any way, shape, or form for this. And I just feel like it's just all gonna break. Because none of us know what we're doing. And those of us who have an inkling of what to do, those are the types of people who are gonna get persecuted. You know, you see like what's going on with Jordan Peterson and stuff. Like, he continuously has issues with people. As far as all his fame and stuff, you know. At any point in time, I'm sure the Canadian government could fucking, you know, nail his ass to the wall. For whatever reason, just because they get a stick up their ass, you know. For him violating the, whatever the C-16 bill or whatever that bill is, that is basically taking away the Canadian freedom of speech in terms of what you get to call somebody. You know, if I decide that you need to call me princess, you gotta call me princess or you're going to prison, essentially. I'm so sad because, you know, I've read the Bible on and off, and I've read enough of it to get, you know, the perspective that the things that a patriarchy or, you know, patriarchal society builds, the, you know, including Western civilization, is really good. Really, really good. And then to have that all brought down by people who just want to break a good thing. All the stability, everything. They just want to destroy it. It's like a form of self-suicide that I just can't understand. And you could imagine why the God of War might get tired of it. Or at least I can.